What if the very thing you have spent your whole life avoiding was actually your secret weapon? Not love, not success, not attention, but solitude. Imagine this. You walk into a room, no smile, no makeup, no effort to impress. Yet somehow, everyone feels you. There's a gravity to your presence, a calm intensity, like a storm that does not need to thunder to be feared. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't shrink, because you have discovered something that most people spend their lives running from: the power of being alone. Most women are taught that solitude means loneliness, that if no one sees you, hears you, validates you, you disappear. But the truth is darker and more beautiful. The most untouchable women in the world are not loud. They are quiet. But their quietness is not weakness. It's the silence of someone who has met herself in the dark and did not flinch. Carl Jung believed that only in solitude can you face your shadow, the hidden parts of yourself that hold both your pain and your power. Solitude is not absence, it's revelation. It does not disconnect you from the world, it reveals your place in it. And once you have seen your true self, you stop begging others to define you. So, the question is, are you ready to stop fearing solitude and start wielding it like a weapon? Because what you are about to discover might just change your life forever. In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, the idea of being alone is often met with fear and discomfort. For women, especially, there's a pervasive societal stigma that associates solitude with weakness, loneliness, or even failure. We're taught from a young age that to be constantly surrounded by people, friends, family, or partners is a sign of success. The fear of solitude, therefore, is not just personal. It's a cultural construct that promotes the idea that to be alone means to be incomplete. Women in particular are pressured to be ever present for others, to be nurturing, caring, and emotionally available, as if their value is tied solely to how much they can give or how much they are needed. But this fear of being alone comes at a great cost. When women avoid solitude, they may unknowingly begin to rely on others for emotional validation. This creates a dependency on external sources to feel worthy, beautiful, or important. Over time, this can lead to emotional exhaustion, constantly seeking approval from others while neglecting their own needs and desires. This cycle of dependence not only drains emotional energy, but also stunts personal growth, as the individual's sense of self becomes fractured. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow comes into play here. According to Jung, the shadow represents the unconscious parts of ourselves that we repress because they don't fit into our idealized self-image. In many ways, the fear of solitude prevents us from facing these hidden parts of our psyche. It is only in moments of true solitude that we can confront and integrate these unconscious elements, ultimately leading to greater self-awareness and growth. When women are too afraid to be alone, they miss the opportunity to explore their shadow and emerge more whole, powerful, and connected to their true selves. Carl Jung believed that the path to true psychological and spiritual fulfillment begins with a process he called individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating our conscious personality with the unconscious parts of ourselves. According to Jung, we are not whole by default, we become whole. And this can only happen when we turn inward, facing the parts of ourselves that we usually avoid, ignore, or suppress. In other words, individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, authentically, unapologetically ourselves. But here's the part most people overlook. This journey toward individuation cannot happen in noise. It cannot happen in crowds. It requires solitude, a sacred space where the ego is quiet enough for the unconscious to speak. Solitude is not isolation. It's not loneliness. It's self-reflection. It's the place where the mask we wear for the world starts to fall off, and we begin to see who we truly are underneath. In the modern world, solitude is often mistaken for emptiness, but Jung saw it as fullness, the only space where the soul can breathe. For women especially, who are conditioned to prioritize relationships, emotions, and responsibilities over their own identity, solitude can feel threatening at first. But in reality, it's liberating. It's the only place where their true self is not being pulled in 1,000 directions. It's where their inner voice grows louder than the world's expectations. When a woman embraces solitude, something profound begins to happen. She stops outsourcing her worth to others. She stops molding herself to fit into boxes she was never meant to live in. She begins listening to her instincts. She reconnects with her intuition, her inner guide, and she starts walking a path that is entirely her own, not one handed to her by culture, family, or society. Jung believed that when we face the unconscious, we confront both our darkness and our light. But that confrontation is what makes us powerful. Women who embrace solitude are not running from the world. They are returning to themselves. And in doing so, they become untouchable. Because when you have made peace with who you are in silence, the noise of the world can no longer control you. Throughout history, some of the most powerful, revolutionary women have shared one surprising trait. Not loud rebellion, not external dominance, but solitude. They did not just accept being alone, they chose it. And in that choice, they discovered a kind of power society could never offer them. Take Virginia Woolf, for instance. In her iconic essay, A Room of One's Own, she declared that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. But what she was really saying is deeper than economics or architecture. She was talking about the psychological space a woman needs, mental freedom, to explore herself without interruption. Woolf's solitude was not loneliness. It was a rebellion, a refusal to be defined by a world built by men. And it was in that sacred isolation that she produced some of the most groundbreaking literature of the 20th century. Another powerful example is Simone de Beauvoir, a philosopher who refused to live in the shadow of her partner, Jean-Paul Sartre, despite being in a lifelong relationship with him. She carved her own intellectual identity, often retreating into solitude to write, reflect, and challenge the roles assigned to women. Her work, The Second Sex, was not just a feminist manifesto. It was the product of solitude-induced clarity, the result of deep thought that could only happen when the noise of conformity was silenced. But solitude's power is not limited to famous figures. Psychological case studies reveal that many women experience profound transformation after embracing solitude, especially those recovering from toxic relationships, burnout, or emotional dependency. In therapy, women who once feared being alone began to uncover parts of themselves they had buried for years. One case described a woman who, after a painful divorce, spent months in self-imposed solitude. At first, the silence was unbearable, but over time, it became healing. She began painting again, meditating, reconnecting with her childhood passions. Her emotional energy, once drained by constant people-pleasing, began to return. She did not just survive, she thrived. Solitude offers something rare, a space without expectations, no one to impress, no roles to perform. And in that emptiness, women start to fill themselves with purpose, clarity, creativity. Research shows that solitude enhances creativity by allowing the brain to enter a default mode network, a state where we process emotions, connect ideas, and have those aha moments. In the case of women, especially those who have been conditioned to live externally, it's often the first time they truly meet themselves. When a woman is constantly surrounded by people, roles, and demands, she is rarely herself. She is everyone else's version of her. But when she chooses solitude, she sheds those versions. She begins to create her own. That's where her power is born, not from what others see, but from what she finally sees in herself. Women who embrace solitude are not escaping the world. They are rebuilding themselves away from its noise. And history shows us, those who walk that quiet path often return louder, clearer, and more influential than ever before. In today's hyper-connected world, we are taught that connection is everything, that success lies in networking, validation, constant communication. But what we don't talk about is the dark side of all this socializing, especially for women. Because behind the smiles, the group chats, the carefully curated posts, there's often a silent, growing void. Over-socialization is not harmless. For many women, it's a mask, a way to escape the discomfort of being alone. But in running from solitude, they run into something far more dangerous: emotional exhaustion. When every moment is filled with noise, when you are constantly adjusting to other people's needs, expectations, and opinions, you slowly lose sight of your own. This is particularly intense for women who are often raised to be caretakers, pleasers, emotional anchors. The result? They become experts at tuning into others, but strangers to themselves. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every gathering becomes a silent negotiation of identity. And over time, that performance starts to drain them, not just mentally, but spiritually. Burnout creeps in. Not the kind you get from work deadlines, but something deeper, the fatigue of constantly being on. The slow suffocation of never having space to breathe, to reflect, to just exist without being perceived. Studies have shown that people who over-socialize report higher levels of anxiety, decreased productivity, and even reduced self-esteem, especially when their self-worth is tied to how others respond to them. Worse, chronic external validation becomes addictive. A woman might feel powerful when others approve of her, but the moment that approval fades, so does her confidence. She becomes reactive, bending herself to whatever garners praise or affection. It's a subtle form of self-erasure, and over time, it leads to something terrifying: identity loss. She no longer knows what she wants, what she values, or even who she is, outside of others' expectations. But here's the truth: validation that comes from others is temporary. Validation that comes from within is unshakable. And solitude is the only space where that inner voice can emerge. When a woman steps back from the noise, she stops reacting and starts listening to herself. She begins to rebuild her identity not from approval, but from authenticity. Ironically, women who dare to disconnect are often called cold, distant, or selfish. But they are none of those things. They are simply women who have discovered a truth society fears. True strength does not come from being everywhere. It comes from being deeply rooted within. There's a type of woman you can't control. You can't guilt her into doing what she does not want. You can't lure her with flattery or break her with silence. She does not chase, beg, or bend because she does not need anything from you. This is not arrogance. It's not coldness. It's the result of a woman who has sat in her solitude long enough to know herself. And that woman is untouchable. Untouchability is not about being distant. It's a psychological state, a quiet, powerful self-possession that comes from within. These women are rare, not because they're flawless, but because they have done the one thing most people avoid. They have spent real time alone, not scrolling, not numbing, just being, reflecting, listening, healing. In that space, they have come face to face with their fears, their insecurities, their truth. And through that, they have gained something no one can give them: clarity. Solitude clears the mental noise. It strips away society's expectations, past trauma, and people-pleasing habits. When a woman spends time alone, intentionally, she begins to see what's real and what's not. She learns what she values, what she tolerates, and what she refuses to accept. This clarity is her weapon. It allows her to set boundaries without guilt, walk away without hesitation, and say no without explanation. This is what makes her untouchable, not her distance, but her independence. She is a woman who does not need attention to feel seen, a man to feel worthy, or noise to feel alive. Her solitude has taught her to validate herself, regulate her emotions, and take full ownership of her life. No one can use loneliness against her because she's not afraid of it anymore. And the result? A powerful sense of confidence and emotional sovereignty. People might misunderstand her, they might call her intimidating, but deep down, they feel it, that she cannot be swayed. This is not just philosophy, it's psychology. Studies show that individuals who regularly embrace solitude develop higher emotional intelligence, stronger impulse control, and greater resistance to manipulation. When you're not constantly seeking approval, you stop falling for emotional traps. Think of women like Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, or Frida Kahlo. They did not just survive solitude, they used it as fuel. Their power didn't come from constant connection, but from deep reflection, from standing alone and using that silence to sharpen their voice. And the truth is, every woman has the capacity to become this version of herself. Not by becoming someone else, but by returning to herself. Through solitude, she stops shrinking to fit into the world and starts expanding into her own. She becomes whole, complete, and untouchable. Not because no one can reach her, but because no one can shake her. Solitude is not a punishment. It's a portal, a gateway to the deepest parts of yourself that the noise of the world tries to silence. And for women especially, solitude can be the most powerful tool for transformation. When a woman chooses solitude, not as escape, but as intention, she begins a journey that few dare to take, the path of self-discovery. In that quiet space, stripped of roles, expectations, and distractions, she meets the one person who often gets neglected, herself. It starts with discomfort. The stillness can feel suffocating at first. No one to text, no one to impress, no task to rush toward. But this discomfort is sacred. It's the first sign that something real is surfacing. Hidden desires, unprocessed emotions, forgotten dreams. In solitude, these things rise, not to break her, but to show her who she really is beneath the conditioning. Carl Jung called this process integration, the act of bringing together all parts of the self, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious. And solitude is the space where this integration becomes possible. Without the world's noise telling her who she should be, she finally hears the quiet truth of who she is. But solitude isn't passive. It's a practice, a discipline, one that women can harness through powerful tools. Journaling, writing down thoughts and feelings, helps unravel inner patterns, fears, and longings. It turns chaos into clarity. Meditation. By observing the mind without judgment, she creates space between her thoughts and her identity. Intentional solitude, walks in nature, unplugged weekends, silent mornings. Each act deepens the connection with her inner world. And the beauty of this process? It reveals hidden strengths, talents she didn't know she had, passions buried under years of pleasing others, resilience that was waiting to be unlocked. The very things that make her unique don't come from the outside. They're uncovered in silence. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from accepting all parts of the self: the wounded child, the fierce protector, the dreamer, the doubter. In solitude, a woman doesn't deny these parts, she welcomes them. She stops running from herself and starts embracing herself. This isn't just self-care, it's self-ownership. And it's revolutionary in a world that constantly tells women to look outward for their worth. Through solitude, she stops needing the world to approve of her because she finally approves of herself. And with that approval comes freedom. Freedom to speak truth without fear, to walk away from what no longer serves her, to design a life that reflects her inner world, not someone else's version of success. So, yes, solitude can be uncomfortable, but it's also where the real work happens. The kind of work that does not just change how a woman feels, it changes who she becomes. A woman who embraces solitude does not just survive in silence, she transforms in it. And when she emerges, she's not the same. She's whole, she's grounded, she's unshakable, and most importantly, she's finally, fully herself. Solitude isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. In a world that constantly demands your attention, choosing to step back is an act of rebellion and power. For women especially, learning to embrace solitude is how you begin to break free from the invisible chains of societal expectation and step into the version of yourself that no one can touch. But how do you start? It begins with a mindset shift. Solitude is not loneliness. It's not isolation. It's not a punishment. It's a sanctuary, a space where your voice gets louder and the world's noise fades into the background. When you stop fearing solitude and start seeking it, you stop being available for manipulation. You stop being defined by other people's opinions. You become untouchable. Here are some practical steps to start your journey. Schedule solitude like a ritual. Just as you'd schedule a meeting or a social event, carve out time for yourself. This could be as small as 15 minutes a day or as deep as an entire weekend unplugged. Make it non-negotiable. Turn down the volume of the world. Take digital detoxes. Say no to unnecessary gatherings. Disconnect from anything that feels like noise and reconnect with what feels like truth. Practice being alone, intentionally. Sit with your thoughts. Go for a walk without music. Eat a meal in silence. At first, it might feel strange, even uncomfortable, but over time, you'll realize this is where your power lives, in the pauses. Reframe the discomfort, that itch to check your phone, call someone, or stay busy. That's not a flaw, It's a sign that your deeper self is trying to emerge. Sit with it, let it speak, let it lead. Create a self-reflection practice. Journal your thoughts, meditate, reflect. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly want, not what others expect from me? Through this process, something begins to shift. You stop needing people to like you to feel worthy. You stop chasing validation and start honoring your own voice. You become your own emotional anchor. That's what makes you untouchable. Because when you draw strength from within, you no longer fear rejection. You don't bend to fit someone else's mold. You set boundaries without guilt. You speak your truth without trembling. And most importantly, you live by your own design, not the blueprint handed to you. Solitude becomes your training ground, your forge, your sacred space to become so deeply aligned with who you are that the world can no longer pull you off center. And the result? You become a woman who radiates self-possession, who leads not from fear, but from clarity, who does not seek attention, but commands respect. You become a woman no one can control, because you've already claimed control of yourself. So, start small, sit still, listen, embrace the quiet, and know this. In solitude, you don't lose the world, you find yourself. And once you have found yourself, no one can ever take that power away. In a world that teaches women to be everything for everyone, solitude is a revolutionary act. We have explored how solitude, far from being a weakness, is one of the greatest sources of inner power. It helps you reclaim your energy from the noise, from the expectations, and from the relentless need for approval. It allows you to confront your shadows, integrate your truths, and walk into the world whole. Women who embrace solitude become more than just self-aware. They become untouchable. They set boundaries that don't bend. They radiate confidence that does not scream for attention. They lead from a place of stillness, not noise. Carl Jung believed that the path to true individuality required us to explore our unconscious, our hidden depths, and solitude is the bridge that takes us there. It is in that silence that the most powerful transformations begin. So, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped running from solitude and started leaning into it? The answer is simple. You would finally meet the woman you were always meant to be. Start today. Step back. Sit with yourself. Embrace the discomfort. And take the first bold step toward becoming unshakable, unbreakable, and completely unapologetically you.